Pop Culture Pastor.
Okay, Cody. I don't want to skip all the way to the end at the beginning of this watch along, but I'm just going to tell you, I'm not a fan of the end of this episode. And I'm not going to be able to make it very far in without expressing that.
I mean, I was outwardly and physically upset at the end of the episode, but I have hope going into the future.
We'll, of course, talk about that here momentarily, but
it did make the video game experience more real.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing I had heard is, oh, like so-and-so hasn't died 100 times yet.
Yeah, I'm assuming when you play the video game, you play as Joel.
I assume so.
Yeah, so we didn't play Last of Us.
No, I've played almost every other zombie game, evidently.
Yeah, so that's what makes this part interesting in general, us reviewing Last of Us, because I'm watching along with it, because we're kind of in the dark. We don't know where the story is going, and I'm assuming and holding out hope that the end of this episode is a clever deke to everyone that didn't play the game, because I'm assuming that Pedro Pascal is going to keep on living. He better be, or I'm going to throw something. Anyways, welcome. You're here to hear us review Last of Us, Episode 6.
Episode 6.
Yeah, obviously, spoilers. If you haven't watched Episode 6, don't listen to this episode yet, because that's what we're going to talk about.
You probably should have turned it off before we talked about the video game.
This particular Pop Culture Pastor, is called Watch-Alongs, and this is where we just this is a new one. This is the first one. We kind of been doing it in the main pod, but we decided, hey, let's make this separate, because I think some people were putting off listening to the main pod until they'd watched the show, because they didn't want to ruin it. So we did this. We thought, why don't we just record it separate?
So for those of you that actually really enjoyed this show, you're welcome. And for those of you that have been like, this show sounds silly, give it a listen. Watch it. Those sorts of things.
You might like it. We will compare it to other post-apocalyptic zombie-ish type shows, I'm sure, as we already have. And hey, this season will come to an end, and we'll start watching something else. Mandalorian's on the horizon, so I know a lot of us are into that.
Theodore Lasso.
Ted Lasso's coming up. Man, it's going to get dicey, because those will be going on at the same time. What do we do?
Whatever one is hot garbage at that moment is not getting reviewed.
Okay. Last of Us, Episode 6. When last we left our intrepid duo, they were becoming a duo again after having been a 4-person team for about an episode.
Oh, yeah.
And as this show has become quite accustomed to doing, making us hope that Joel and Ellie are going to have companions, they were cruelly taken away at the end of Episode 5. And this episode, by the way, makes us relive that final moment for no apparent reason.
You needed to refeel the feels.
Yeah, because they were going to do a time jump. So this episode starts 3 months later, and I guess they can't show you 3 months later until they show you what just happened. Which, all right.
Well, it sets up some existential dilemma for Joel. So
it is. I continue to have my expectations subverted, which I think is good for this show. It being based on a video game and also in a genre that's pretty well played.
Yeah.
So the time jumps, how quickly they're moving through. I just assumed going into this show that Joel and Ellie's journey to Wyoming would take the entire first season. I just thought that was the way it was going to be. I'd kind of basing that on, kind of a Walking Dead time movement sort of structure. But they have not wasted any time. They're moving forward. And so we get the time jump this episode, 3 months after the last episode. We find them to already be kind of in mountain country or just getting into it. And they are on the lookout for Joel's brother and any fireflies, I suppose. I don't know. They're kind of looking. They're searching. They run across this older couple who are hilarious, by the way.
Steal the episode.
They absolutely did. The one guy who gets, if there's a Native American older man Native American part or a chief part, this dude plays it. And I can't remember his name, the actor.
Oh yeah.
But he's got that part down and he's great. And his wife, fantastic. I don't know who she is, but she was hilarious. She was like, do you have your gun? It's all the way over there. That's me in the apocalypse right there. But it was all the way over there. It's good stuff. So they come across these people. They're clearly he has no idea where Tommy is. They're still kind of in the dark. They're just heading to Wyoming, which is a giant state.
It is.
And so they get some direction from this older couple who are just kind of out there in the wilderness, and then including an ominous warning about crossing a river of death.
Yes. And like at this point, I'm thinking, has this fungus learned how to take on other animals besides ants and humans?
That's a good question.
And
we have not seen that yet, but it seems like if they could take over humans, they could take over animals, right?
Because there are some animals, including an animal that makes an appearance in this episode, fellow primates, if you will, that are similar body composure makeup, if you will, of humans. And so I would think they could also be ripe for the pickings.
Well, you know what's interesting is, did you know that humans share some crazy number, over 90% DNA with most animals on Earth?
So again, if we can take the ants and we can take the humans.
I don't know if that's accurate. I think I remember hearing that. That's one of those things. Take that with a grain of salt until you can prove it. I am not a scientist. I just feel like I remember hearing that because I was shocked to know that our DNA isn't that far off from frogs.
Frogs, pigs, elephants.
Anyways, through the course of this, I definitely want to come back to the conversation of the river of death. Because the way the old couple describes it is, people go across the river and then there's bodies littered across the river at some point. Like, they don't really get into specifics, but something is killing people across the river. So they eventually find, or Tommy's people find them.
Tommy's group of ruffians.
Yeah, they get surrounded, and we find out that this is the people from Jackson, Wyoming,
or the people from True Blood.
Yeah, Rutino Wesley, who is in True Blood, is one of the townsfolk, and we find out Tommy's wife.
We call her Tara in my household.
Yeah, the reuniting of Tommy and Joel is pretty awesome. They go into this town, and this town is, man, they've got it set up right. So we see a dam in this episode that they have fixed up, that there is powering their town. They have electricity. They have houses. They're of course walled in.
They have a movie theater, as one does.
Yeah, they're kind of protected by being out. And like, if you ever been to Wyoming, it's a sparsely populated state. And so things are good here in this town. Joel has met up with Tommy and asks Tommy to take Ellie to eastern Colorado. So there's some backtracking that'll go on.
I instantly had issues with this.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm like, why don't you just ask Tommy to come along? Like, why do you have to abandon the mission? It makes sense to have an extra set of hands ready to to blast your way through it if you need it, and also to have someone that's familiar with the terrain, but you could still go with her.
Well, I know, right? On both counts, because one, it feels like Joel's saying, you have to take her, and I'm not going kind of thing is like, okay, that's weird, but I can chalk it up to, well, he's just afraid. So we get this time jump, and they do a good job of writing the script to make us give us signals that that Joel and Ellie's relationship has moved down the line a little bit, where there's more caring, there's more trust. And then, of course, in this episode, through the course of Joel's conversation with Tommy, where he kind of just basically tells him, I'm not the same, I'm old. We know that Joel is pretty much deaf in one ear. Slow to pull the trigger. He's having panic attacks.
Yeah, at first I'm like, is he going to have a heart attack? And then I'm like, oh, this looks more like panic attacks.
I thought heart attack at first too, and I was like, what is happening?
/ that's realistic. I mean, he has to be in his 50s at least.
Well, when he had his when he had his first panic attack, I thought it was a heart attack, and I was like, you can't take Pedro Pascal from us in season 1. That's called foreboding.
It is foreboding.
So, anyways, yes, that was all confusing because I think Tommy does the same thing though. Like, I understand why Joel might be just afraid of losing Ellie, but then like she picks him. Ellie's, first of all, really angry with Joel because she has, obviously cares about Joel and looks at him as a father figure now because she just hasn't had many in her life. And she overhears their conversation. She's really upset. So Joel comes in the morning, gives her the choice. She immediately picks him. And then Tommy, who shows up ready to go, who I'm assuming has already told his wife he's going, is like, okay, you guys got it. Good luck. Wait, what? Why wouldn't the brothers just go?
Now, I could see Joel saying, Tommy, you stay here and take care of your pregnant wife.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say that.
So that's a cool juxtaposition of the episode, though. So way back in the first episode, we see these two men at completely opposite phases of their life, So it's Joel with the daughter, who's older, the more mature one, who's got all these things he's responsible for. And it's Tommy, the younger brother, who's like ending up in jail because he was in a bar fight and he has no responsibilities but himself.
Oh, Tommy, you ruffian.
And so we get to this part where Joel has basically stopped living life because of all these bad things that have happened. It is a post-apocalyptic world after all. And he's worn down by life. And now we find Tommy, who has all these things to live for. He's married. He's about to have a baby, which Joel does not react well to at first.
No, I understood it.
Yeah, that one made sense. There's a lot of emotional weight in this episode. I'm going back and forth whether I like these episodes that further the main story more or the backtrack stories, the flashback stories. Because while I think the flashback stories are wonderful so far in giving us these kind of in-depth look at characters, the emotional resonance of episodes where they move the story forward and it's Joel and Ellie centric. Mm-hmm. And especially Joel this episode where we see him go through the processes of finding something to live for again, which makes the end even the more cruel.
It does.
These show creators.
Who do you think you are? I am.
Who do you think you? Anyways, we'll get there. So, the emotional resonance of Joel in this episode, the kind of emotional journey he goes on in this episode alone with Ellie, with his brother Tommy. It is a little confusing that Tommy does not go with him, but okay, we'll look past it. Do we think that the town is in trouble though? Anytime I see something this good, Walking Dead may have trained me for this too. Every time they had it good in The Walking Dead, something bad was eventually going to happen.
Well, that conversation, because Ellie comes in guns a-blazing with her rhetoric towards Tara.
Yeah.
I know that's not her name on this show.
It's
but
Maria.
She's
It's
Tara.
Maria. Okay, but we got to start referring to them by their real names, not of shows they did 15 years ago.
Tara from True Blood basically answers Ellie's question of about all these dead bodies with there's some people that you gotta protect the good. And so
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Because what the older couple describes of the river of death and their explanation for it, Tommy and Maria's explanation for it, I don't think they jive well. I don't think we're talking about the same thing.
oh yeah.
I think that Tommy and Maria assume that the old people were talking about them, but I don't think we're talking about the same thing. I think there's something bad out there. Are we on the same page there?
So either that or Tommy and Maria, as you're referring to her as, are actually into some rougher, more hardcore gang warfare than what we're aware of.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
That group of Rough Riders that they were with, they looked like bad hombres.
Well, yeah, and the dude talking to them when they take him in custody, it seems like, okay, these are raiders. These aren't nice people, but they don't kill him, and that's the main thing. So, and in this scenario, I mean, basically, a lot of Joel and Tommy's conversation in particular is the things they had to do, and Tommy just straight up says, "We murdered people."
Yeah,
and then and then he backs it up with, "Well, that's what we had to do to stay alive. I'm not blaming you, but we murdered people, and it doesn't really sit right with me." So the fact that they don't kill them, to me, is the ultimate telltale of their character and shapes my understanding of what the old couple told them about the river and makes me think it's not the townsfolk.
/ I do want to know how they trained their dog.
Yeah, that was interesting, right? How do they train it? And how does the dog not get cordyceps?
Good question.
I need to know these things. Okay. So Joel and Ellie set out on their mission to Eastern Colorado University with a newfound, even more father-daughter-y kind of interactions. He's teaching her to shoot. They're getting closer now that they have this understanding of like, now we're in it, right? Like we've gone past this. Joel has gone past this point of no return where like, okay, you're like a daughter to me, which should have been the first clue we knew something bad was going to happen.
They also have a horse. And you might be thinking,
what does
Cody,
that mean?
What does that have to do with anything? But as they're approaching this university, they make several grave mistakes that I'm like, you have a horse. Stay on the horse. Don't leave the horse with the monkeys.
But they had to get out and investigate. They go into the building. I'm told. I was like, no, don't go into the building. Well, first of all, there is a complaint in there. I know, like, part of me says, I get you have to investigate what happened because you assume they're not in there. You assume if this is the Fireflies, they would have stopped you as soon as you went in or approached the premises.
Oh, yeah.
So I get maybe you need to go in there and investigate. And they do seem to indicate that maybe the scientists that were there and the Fireflies packed up and went to Salt Lake City.
Interesting place to go.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole time I'm like, no, get out of there. Get out of there. Then they hear the clanging. I'm like, well, don't go there.
So at this point, I'm telling my wife, this building is where you do your raiding and looting in video games for medical supplies. Because when you're trying to survive a zombie apocalypse, you need all the medicines.
And if I'm anything, I know I'm an expert at surviving zombie apocalypses now.
I am.
Because you've seen these shows and the movies, and you just know.
And you play the video games. You can find some good axes in these buildings. Somehow there's ammo left behind all the time.
If I wrote a video game like this, Joel would never go into buildings. And he just never, like, no, why would you go in there? The monkeys, I don't trust them either.
Oh, yeah. I'm like,
It's like, get away from those monkeys. You don't know what they have.
they might have the fungus.
You think it's all fun and games and like, hey, maybe we don't have cordyceps, but then one bites you and you get Ebola.
Yeah.
How would you like that nonsense? You're dying of Ebola in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. That would be my luck.
It would be.
Okay, so the place is abandoned. They investigate. They find out that maybe they've gone to Salt Lake City. We don't know. That's a hanging plot thread for the future.
It is.
And we spot raiders. People walking around.
Scum of the earth.
I mean, yeah, probably. I don't know.
I've already labeled them.
Yeah, I mean, everyone. This is the premise of every post-apocalyptic story. Humans are bad. You don't want to run into other humans because of what Joel and Tommy conversated about.
Yeah.
That they think they got to murder you to stay alive because you'll murder them. And so they try to escape. There is an altercation. They get away, but in the process, we find out Joel has been stabbed.
He got shivved, shanked.
And they get away, but as they get outside of town, they're like, Ellie gives the obligatory, I think we lost them. We're safe. They're not coming after us. But Joel passes out, presumably from a loss of blood, falls off the horse. And the episode ends with Ellie crying, "You can't leave me. You can't leave me." And it ends with me yelling at my TV, "Why would you do this? You cannot take Pedro Pascal." Now, I'm basing all hope right here on the assumption that video game players already know what's going to happen. I feel this is like the opposite of Game of Thrones for me. Whereas I was a book reader and I knew everything that was happening, so things didn't shock me. I find myself on the other end now, and I don't like it.
So at this moment, I have John Wayne in my head. And he's talking to like this little boy. Well, he's probably a teenager. And I don't even remember what John Wayne movie it is. But the kid's been shot in the gut. And the kid's like, "Pa always said gut shots are the worst. I'm a goner.
Go on without me."
And I'm like, "Pedro, you got stabbed in the gut.
I know.
You're a goner."
He's totally going to die, isn't he? How does he get out of this? And we're not going to know for at least 2 weeks. You know why?
Because it's a flashback.
Because on the coming attractions, it was clear that the next episode is all flashback.
Because Ellie has been talking nonstop about how she's had to kill people too. And we're finally going to get to see it.
Now, granted, I like the flashback episodes, but the way this episode ended, I was like, don't you do this to me. But yeah, all in all, it was a character development and a moving the big story along episode, which hasn't been the case. Usually it's one or the other, but this one seems to encapsulate both. It was a great episode.
It was heartbreaking because Pedro is the only reason I tune in.
I'm just going to go through my week assuming like, no, they're not. No, they're not going to kill off Pedro Pascal in season 1. Are they? They did it with Game of Thrones. They killed off the star right at the beginning, even though that was the book. But Ed Stark, man, they killed him off.
Well,
they're not doing that to us, right? They're not doing that to us.
You have to kill him off because any show he's in, he dies instantly.
This is true. All right. The Run the Race Award. Who wins the episode, Cody? Who's the winner of this episode?
It's a toss-up between Pedro, who will always be in this conversation, and the indigenous couple at the beginning.
They're amazing. Honestly, I wanted to give it to them, but I wanted more time with them.
Yes.
And if they don't show up again, I'm going to be very disappointed.
But yes, Pedro, because his conversations with Tommy, like I still don't like Tommy that much. And so like, I'm not going to give Tommy this award. I think Pedro has like some come to Jesus moments.
Yeah.
Because of his conversation with Tommy, because of his conversation with Ellie, because of his conversation with the indigenous couple, he realizes, like, if there really is this river of death, that they probably shouldn't go because Ellie's going to die because he can't protect her. Tommy's
weird for me. Yeah. It's almost like they're writing him in a way where you're not supposed to fully be on board with him, or I don't know what it is.
I still blame him for Pedro's daughter's death.
Because he doesn't seem to be as glad to see him.
No, he doesn't run.
As Joel is to see Tommy.
He doesn't yell Joel or Jolie.
Yeah. It's like there's something we don't know about Tommy. That's all I'm saying. And I think the show's trying to give us that feeling. There's more to Tommy than we know.
And he was with the Fireflies, but he gave up that lifestyle.
Yeah.
So
he's not about that life anymore.
Gotta find out what that means.
I agree with you. I think Pedro Pascal is the winner of this episode. He's wonderful in that conversation with Tommy when he becomes vulnerable for the first time. And he talks about how he dreams every night and that he's failing in his dreams. And he's trying to explain to Tommy why he needs to be the one to take Ellie, because he's obviously afraid of failing her.
He wakes up knowing he lost something every morning.
That's interspersed in the episode well when he falls asleep on guard duty. There's a couple instances where it's clear he can't hear. And so, yeah, it's good stuff. Of course, that was, if we look back to episode 4, I believe, 4 or 5, it was 4 when he spreads the glass out when they're in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And it doesn't wake him up, but it wakes up Ellie, who has to like yell at him to wake him up. Yeah. So I thought he was wonderful in this episode. More proof that Pedro Pascal is a national treasure.
An international treasure.
Yes. All those. Who's the loser of the episode?
Or the Newman Award winner.
The Hello Newman loser of the episode. It's hard. It's a good episode.
So, like, Ellie's just really angry.
Mm-hmm.
Just with everyone for most of the episode. Like, we get to this town, we're angry. We get to Pedro's giving her a much safer option of going with Tommy because he's young and can hear, and she's angry. And then she's always angry, and I'm like, quit being so angry, you sassy teen.
I think there's something to the episodic way that they parse these out, and I know that's how we used to watch TV. Yes. Everything used to be week to week. You'd have to wait, all summer to find out who shot JR on Dallas. But I don't think that those shows were doing intense character development shows back in the day that came out every week, like Magnum PI, Knight Rider, Who's the Boss? These shows were meant to be binged, I think. And so, yeah, the way Ellie acts in this episode, especially in the town, is super weird to me. I know that's going to be explained probably in the flashbacks next week.
Yeah.
Tommy acts weird in these episodes. I know that's probably going to be explained when we find out what he's hiding.
And I mean, Tara doesn't get that much screen
Maria!
time.
Her name is Maria! All right.
So it's between Ellie and Maria Tara.
All right. Let's what rating are you giving this episode out of 10?
A 9.
Yes, that's a good score.
Like, it wasn't a perfect episode, but it had delivered on most of the hits.
Yeah. I'm going to give it an 8.5. Purely on emotion, purely on the Joel and Ellie story moving forward. I'm so surprised that we've already gotten to this emotional resonance place with them this quickly. Again, I think it's a good job by the showrunners that they keep subverting expectation. They're not dragging the story out. I mean, the story's moving at a pretty fast clip.
So I
good.
wonder if this is going to be like a one season show or just a couple seasons.
It's already been picked up for season 2.
Okay.
That happened a few weeks back.
So I'm hoping that they don't fall into the trap of The Walking Dead where like it goes on way too long.
Yeah.
I could see this being a good, maybe do the Ted Lasso route. We do 3 seasons and that's good.
3 seasons in a movie.
Yes.
Make it happen. All right. So obviously we liked episode 6 of The Last of Us. What did you guys think? This is the best part about watch-alongs is when we post this to our social media. Hey, tell us what you thought. What did you like about the episode? Are you watching this with us? We don't know. This is the first time we've had a standalone episode of this. We're trying it out. Let's see what happens. So let us know on our post on social media for this episode. And as usual, make sure and subscribe to the pod. Don't miss anything. You don't want to miss our Radio Bits pod where we talk about just more things in general, or our main pod that drops every Friday where we have a centralized issue topic we talk about. So as always, thank you so much for listening. We love you guys, and we will see you next time.